Hello again. This is Josh Carr at The Real Angle, and today I'm speaking with Roger Krulak, founder and president of Fullstack Modular. Roger, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, Josh. How are you?
Good, 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 good. Thanks for asking. So today we're going to talk about modular construction. So let's start with the basics. Full stack modular, the 30-second elevator pitch. What are you guys, so to speak?
We are a fully volumetric design manufacture system for mid to high rise buildings.
Got it. Got it. Building in a modular fashion.
Three
And
dimensions.
three dimensions, all good. And just so everyone out there knows, I've actually been to Rogers Factory, so this is not a tech startup. They're based in Brooklyn. They actually are legitimately building buildings. Um, let's talk about some of your projects, just to give people a scope for an idea of the kind of stuff you build. What have you built? What are you working on? Kind of what kind of projects are you doing?
Yeah, so we started out building the tallest modular building in the world, which is now the tallest modular building in the United States because the industry is growing elsewhere. We've built hotels, affordable housing, a couple of projects atypical for LaGuardia Airport. We have just been uh, we have just been selected to build 4,200 student housing beds in California. So it's a wide range, but in the markets that that are really our sweet spot.
Now that's interesting. So, I mean, I know the factory is in Brooklyn and you're building 4,200 beds in California. How does that work? Do you have a second factory? Are you trucking things across the country?
Yeah, so we actually moved from Brooklyn to Hamden, Connecticut last year, and
Okay,
so that factory has moved. And we also have a factory right now in Portland, Oregon.
got it, got it. So obviously that helps on shipping. So at this point, then you can do the East Coast, you can do the West Coast. I imagine cost of shipping becomes a factor? So if I called you up and said, "Hey, I want to do something in Denver," is that not going to make sense at this
It
point in time, or how do you think of
it's
it? I
it's
guess.
like any other, yeah, it's like any other job, right? There's countervailing costs, right? So like, can I build it cheaper with labor? Can I buy the material cheaper? Does transport cost more? It's a typical pre-construction conversation.
Got it.
One
Now,
of the
and you're
elements.
talking about labor, and you mentioned labor costs, so I guess that was one question I was going to ask you. I mean, where like I mean, I'm 50. I've been kicking around for a while, and since I entered the industry, people have talked about modular construction and about why it made sense. And I mean, not to do your work for you, but it's you can control the process because it's in a factory. Weather stops being an issue. You can get the project up relatively quickly once you deliver the materials. All that sort of stuff makes sense to me. So where where's your sweet spot? Does your process work better in high labor markets? Like why does someone go with you versus just saying, let's do it the good old fashioned way of how we've always built?
Well, I mean, look, the value proposition of modular is first, faster construction, less neighborhood disruption, more sustainable, etc. And if the design build process goes correctly, you can also save money. And if you repeat what you're building, I should say, if you admit that you repeat what you're building, because all developers repeat what they're building, that they don't always admit that they're repeating what they're building. If they admit that they repeat what they're building, then yes, there's some cost savings just from the economies of scale that are created by industrialization.
Right, because there are only so many ways to build a one-bedroom apartment, assumedly, and once you've kind of
Assuming
figured
you're
that out,
complying with code,
uh,
there are a whole lot of parameters that you have to meet, and you could make a 3 or 4 fixture bathroom and you could put the toilet on one wall versus another, but the window's usually in the bedroom, and you probably want a window in your living space. I mean, there's not, it's not, I don't think there's as much magic flow in multifamily as people like to pretend.
Sure, and especially, I mean, you mentioned you're doing a student housing project. I'd imagine with student housing, that's a wonderful example of repeatability. I mean, because a dorm room
Right.
is a dorm room is a dorm room.
No, and
It,
frankly,
it's it kind of
hotels
makes
pretty
sense.
much the same thing. Yeah, hotels up to the like ultra luxury are up to 5 star probably pretty simple. The rooms are pretty much the same. You have this version, that version, and that version. Multifamily, the same thing. Like, do you really need three different types of one bedrooms? Like, if you can take one bedroom, one two bedroom, and one three bedroom, again, you can get enough repeatability that there is a value proposition, and the quality's really
Sure.
good. Yeah. So the other thing I
Yeah,
think that you,
let's
the other thing that you were alluding to is the question about labor, and the reality is that you don't need to read. You can read a rag, on your way checking out of the grocery store if you don't have your food delivered, and you'll notice that like labor markets everywhere are a problem, right? Even in China, you could read today, labor is a problem. So, not unskilled labor. Uh, is more readily available than skilled labor and generally costs a little less. So if you want to be able to meet the housing need, which we're not, you need to find ways of using moderately skilled labor to produce things that are needed. And industrialization has been utilized in every industry but construction for exactly that purpose.
right. No, and it is interesting. I mean, like I enjoy following construction technology and seeing what the new innovations are. And I mean, every year there are new innovations. Like, of course there are, but like at the end of the day, there's a lot more that doesn't change than what changes. I mean, I'm sure there's a toilet manufacturer out there who would disagree with me, but fundamentally, a toilet is doing the job of the toilet. Like fine, this one flush is 10% stronger. Like, but at the end of the
Yeah,
day, it's
yeah.
we
There are
we
some
kind of got
interesting.
that technology down.
Yeah, vacuum systems for plumbing are quite interesting. They're not exactly new, but they're getting proliferated. But I'm just to play with what you're
Yeah,
talking about. But absolutely. But the interesting thing is like many of these construction innovations are very hard to implement on site, right? I mean, everything that goes into a building is manufactured. Let's be honest. Like, what do we
right,
have in? I mean, even high end trim is manufactured.
right.
Custom trim is manufactured. So even the tools you use to put the darn thing together is manufactured. The only thing that's not manufactured is the built environment where it all ends up. How silly is that? Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes. I mean, look, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. It's just amazing how long it's taken to get people to accept the reality of this. Now, full stack modular, like when did I know you were spun out of Forest City Ratner, right? That's what it
Yeah,
was originally. It was a they were
end
owned
of
by
two
them at
thousand
one point.
end of 2016. Yeah.
Okay. And were you did you work at Forest City? Like, how did
I
that
did. I was there for
transpire?
15 years. I was there for 15 years. Yeah. So I started this within Four City and then
Got it.
left and bought the business with some investors. Yeah.
Got it. Then it became its own thing. Well, that's pretty neat. I mean, it's funny because again, like real estate isn't tech, right? So I think having a spin-off entity, whereas if you talk to Google or Apple, that would just be another Tuesday. But for our industry, we don't tend to spin off businesses again because we don't tend to be innovating stuff. So there's no real reason to spin anything off. Um, so that's interesting. That's interesting. Cool. So I guess a couple other questions I wanted to just run by you. So you've got your team, you've got your factory up in Connecticut, you've got another one down in Portland. So are you guys at a place now where you have a pretty steady flow of projects coming in and out, like which I imagine also means there's something of a lag time. So like if I called you up today and said, "Hey, I want to build a, 8-story building," right? Um it's a matter of what, getting in the queue. How does that
Yeah.
what's my
I mean,
experience of hiring you guys versus the old way, if you will?
yeah. I mean, I think it's the design build process, right? So it's design build add industrialization. So you sit down day one and say, we want to build this. We want to use your system. We need to control costs. We need to work together. And we're doing that right now. At Cal Poly, we're defining the building. We're we're utilizing the system. We're getting local, AHJs involved, and we're constantly pricing so that we can keep the process aligned with the goals. And so that's how it works. I think one of the things that you're addressing is it really a business to provide modular buildings for other people? Because the development cycle is very volatile, like the stock market, and factories don't like that.
Sure.
So we and many others in our industry are trending towards being part of the development team, so we can drive product through the factory, at least for a portion of our capacity, so that you can level out the volatility for exactly the reasons that you're talking about, because it doesn't happen in an hour. We have to buy all the materials, we have to organize them, we have to set up the factory, et cetera, so on and so forth. So it's a great question. And
Yeah.
that to me is the future of at least most modular construction is that they're going to be part of the development team.
Which is not unlike other industries. I mean, I know in
Yeah.
automobile manufacturing, sometimes there's an EV that Jaguar is now discontinuing after a few years, but the joke is it wasn't actually built by Jaguar. It was built by a third-party manufacturer in Austria. So it's like it may say Jaguar, but it was built by a bunch of Germans,
Mhm.
or I should say Austrians. No offense to the Austrians there, but built by a bunch of German-speaking Austrians, but not a bunch of Brits, because that's just the way it
Sure.
is. And which again, other industries have been doing this for centuries.
For years. I mean, if you think,
We could go on, I'm sure.
one of my favorites is the PTAC or split system world. Like those are made in the same factories. You could
Hmm.
slap. I mean, nothing against it, by the way. It's better if they keep it going with
Sure,
consistency and ability. But they slap a Friedrich on it, or they slap a GE on it, or they slap. It's the same product. Anyway, so
sure, sure.
exactly. Yes, we have the need to be part of that development process so that we can keep our factory efficient, cost effective,
Keep the
and
staff employed, trained,
have
and
employed.
running.
Exactly, exactly.
No, and so here's another question I have. So let's say, so you got this gig, for lack of a better word, doing this development project for Cal Poly.
Hmm.
Um, so when they went out for the RFP, because I imagine it was an RFP because they're government folk.
Yep.
When they went out and said we're doing an RFP to build, X number of beds, Y number of rooms, whatever they put out, were you then competing against just other general contractors, build to suit folk? Like, are there other modular people? Not that I'm asking you to name your competition here, but like, was it like one modular guy, you, and like four other just random people? Like, what did that look like?
Well, so in this case, they were actually modular was the goal for cost
Interesting.
effectiveness, timing, etc. There are many cases with people you've already mentioned that are like, oh, modular or conventional or design build, and they're comparing systems, and they choose somebody to be part of that system. And we've done sort
Hmm.
of hackathons for that purpose, and you're like, let's compare one versus the other, etc. But this one was a modular specific focus.
Interesting. Interesting. No, I find that to be fascinating because I mean that's remarkable that they as a client even were tuned in enough to say this is something we want to pursue.
Mhm.
Because I've definitely worked on a bunch of RFPs where the client just says, we need X number of rooms and shrug. Like that's as far as they got.
I mean, I guess this is a good way to put it. There isn't a large GC in the United States today that doesn't have a group that is, offsite focused, offsite construction
Hmm.
focused. So,
Hmm.
and I won't name them all, but you know them. They all have
Yeah.
one. Now, some of them have a big group, some of them have a couple of people, some of them have, but they all have one. 7 years ago, none of them had it. So it is a growth. That's sort of a testament. I mean, besides the growth of the actual modular, you see that the industry adapting slowly, but adapting.
but adapting. Well, yeah, look, it takes us time. I mean, we are definitely an industry that has the attitude of it worked before, so let's keep doing it that way. Which also, in all fairness to ourselves, it makes sense. We're building things that are not consumer products. We're building things that have to survive years and decades even. So
Yeah.
if you want to build something that lasts decades, you know,
You probably ought
there's
to
a lot
build
to be
it
saying.
well. I mean, I a little bit
Yeah.
I mean, I think my great grandfather was a carpenter, and you could put him on a construction site today, and he's been dead since I was born, which was a while ago, and he would be totally comfortable on a construction site today. That's disappointing. I mean, at best.
No, that's true. It's true. I mean, yeah, the technology moves, but at the end of the day, once you kind of figured out the basics of it, it kind of keeps on trucking. So I guess so. Here's another way of looking at this. So your entity, you guys you got your privately held business. You've got these couple locations here. How does your firm grow from this point? Is it opening up additional factories? Is it just doing more of your own projects? Like, where do you want to grow the firm in the next 5, 10, 15 years, if you will?
Yeah, 15 years I will be retired, God willing.
Fair enough. Okay.
But our trajectory right now is the industries we have, but really focusing on being part of the development team. We want to build our own stuff. That's really where I think the industry needs to go to be successful and grow.
Got it. So then in a lot of ways at that point, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but at that point you're just like every other, you're just another multifamily developer, except you have this secret sauce, if you will, because you have your own factory, you can control costs, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera.
And we have a whole bunch of things as a result of that, and the relationships that we've created with industry and labor, et cetera, are make it very. It's a very big push to rethink how we create housing because we're not succeeding at all as a country, as an industry. We're not creating the housing we need, and we as a country have created this incredible manufacturing capacity for technology. Actually, like chips, etc. And there's nowhere to live by any of the factories. Like, what are we going to do? And
Yeah.
it's so myopic. And so we have been focusing with all those people to try to figure out a way to lean into this process and find a game plan that is but collaborative and aligned rather than the sort of adversarial situation that you're talking about. Like, I need a hotel that costs less than 200,000 a key. What do I do?
Right. No, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, it does tie into a lot of the broader issues regarding, cost of construction and the fact that we're just not building enough housing units. We have a lot more people than we have housing, and there's been a total lack at the state and federal level in most jurisdictions of the state level and feds in general to have anything resembling an answer. Just sort
Yeah,
of like,
they have
well,
historically been
it is what it
inefficient.
is.
Yeah, they have been historically inefficient. But the good news is some of them are opening up their eyes to say, could I be more efficient? Which is at least a first start.
Right. So here's another angle I wanted two other questions I had just to get them out. One is from a regulatory standpoint, and the other is from a unionized labor standpoint. So from a regulatory standpoint, like, are they doing, when they do inspections for you, they're doing inspections on site like everything else? Are they coming to the factory? I mean, from the code enforcement officer standpoint, is his job really any different, I guess?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, you mentioned, sort of the old HUD and manufactured housing world. The interesting thing about it is it was created in the 40s and 50s, mostly 50s, sort of post World War, uh,
Sure.
and they created a nationwide system that was almost exactly the same. In order to have states inspect the manufacturing process and its compliance. And most of the
Mm,
modular construction, whether it be permanent or temporary or HUD, or manufactured, follows that process. And it's well oiled and well organized, and it's code compliant, etc. Usually, there's a third party inspector that is certified by the AHJ, authority having jurisdiction, usually the state. Not always, but almost always. and they inspect in the factory.
And I'm sorry, just to jump in, you used an acronym. What was the acronym you used?
AHJ?
HJA. Yeah,
AHJ,
yeah. Just
authority having jurisdiction.
thank you. Just want to define that for people listening. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, and usually I said it's the state. There are a few cities or counties that have their own sort of modular process. It's still the same process, but it's just a different group that's sort of in charge. So those
Got it.
inspections in the factory, with the exception of special inspections, which obviously, well, usually by law across the United States have to happen by the owner. The owner has to hire the special inspector. So those special inspections, wherever they're happening, happen, but they're small, small in quantity, have to happen wherever the work is going on. But the rest is done by a third party. They're signed off as complete according to plans and specifications, a full quality assurance program, certified factory, et cetera, so on and so forth. And then it goes to site, and then the final inspections happen. Obviously, all the systems get tested, and it gets signed off by the
Sure.
by the
So
local.
yeah. So that machinery looks not dissimilar. And then from a union labor standpoint, is that, I mean, I'd imagine if I'm a union rep in my hometown and you now tell me you're building this in Oregon, obviously that would not make me feel warm and fuzzy. Is that is that an issue for you guys? How does that work into this whole conversation?
It's a great question, Josh, and I'm really happy you asked it because we have a very, as I sort of alluded to earlier, we have a very good relationship with the building trades holistically, and we believe so. We now act as basically an alternative apprentice program for the trades, and we are signatory with the trades. In the factory, the work is different.
Okay.
Like it's not, it's not trade organized. It's work organized. But we have, full cooperation and collaboration, trying to figure out how to build more housing with the building trades. So far,
Okay.
working with New York, Connecticut, Pacific Northwest, and parts of California as the start of that. But we are planning on growing together this process because we all know we need the housing, including the people who work in the trades. The average
Right. I mean, at
worker.
the end of the day, if
Yeah,
it doesn't get built, I don't get paid anyway. So, okay. So,
exactly. The
so it
average
sounds like a
the average
process which is,
Yeah, we have a
sorry.
great relationship, huge respect, believe in the process. They understand the need to build housing, you know, you know, full union rate housing in most places where unions are strong is not affordable, and it's not even attainable in many cases. And so
Yeah.
they also are looking for solutions that don't abandon their goal of supporting the workers, giving them a living wage. But if you have to live 3 hours from your job, how much value is it to make an extra $15,000 or $20,000? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but it is a concern and something they're trying to address as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, it sounds like you guys are winning the fight based on more about controlling the process than it is about, well, we'll just use a bunch of low wage labor. Because at the end of the day, you still need skilled labor to do a lot of this work, just by its nature.
You need to train people to do their job. I mean, that's manufacturing
Right.
100%, right? If people don't effectively do their job, you're inefficient, cost inefficient, quality inefficient. So it's bad.
So you're putting in, so when you guys are building stuff in the factory, is there anything you're not building in the factory? Like elevators, I imagine have got to be local, right? So like there's some stuff that you guys just don't do because you just don't do, right?
Yes, I mean, we don't put the final roof in. We don't actually install the elevators in the factory, although there are many successful modular elevators that can go, 6 or 8 stories. But we do build the
Okay.
elevator shafts. We install the stairs, all the hallways, fully distributed MEP. It's an entire structural system by itself. We don't
Huh.
attach to anything. We just sit on top of something. So it's a fully holistic system.
Got it. Got it. No, it's fascinating to me. It's just all there. It's interesting stuff. There are definitely better ways to do things than we've done it to date. Um, Cool. So I guess last question I have, and then I've gone through what I wanted to go through. So right now, product type wise, hotels, I see the obvious need. Multifamily, I see the obvious need. Any other any other things that would surprise me, or product types that just you think are going to stay site built for a long time? Like where do you think you guys don't have an edge? I guess is a better way of putting it.
I think the question is where we think our product and our process fits best, right? And
Okay.
so apart from the three things that you talked about, which is hotels, student housing, multifamily, from affordable through market, um, we do. We have several times done work at airports for this because if you think labor is inefficient on a construction site in a city, labor at an airport is even more unproductive. So there is a compelling reason. And by the way, some airports have holistically embraced it. In Texas, there's two airports that literally built almost their entire airport modularly so that they could, and also so that it could be moved around, like when one airline goes out or one gets busier, that you could move like retail back and forth. I mean, it's so there are a whole bunch of applications that are compelling, mostly from cost and efficiency perspective.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, good. Well, thank you for turning around my turnaround question. That's much appreciated. Well, good. Well, I've gone through what I wanted to hit. I wanted to introduce the modular concept, and also for people listening, have them realize that it's more than just we're not just talking about a house on a truck here. We're talking about the big stuff at this point. For those of you who are interested in checking out more about Roger's company, their website is fullstackmodular.com, and they've got some information about projects they've done and some pretty pictures, and at least you can see some of what they've been building. um, Great. Well, look, Roger, thank you again for your time, and again, for anyone who wants to check that out, that was Roger Krulak at Fullstack Modular. Thanks again.
Thank you, Josh. Have a great day.
You too.